Welcome to The Movement, the podcast where we explore the heartbeat of the YMCA of Greater Kansas City. Join us as we dive into conversations with community leaders, volunteers, members, and associates who have been part of the Y's impact. Discover the inspiring stories of the past and exciting plans for the future as we celebrate how the Y continues to empower lives across our community. Get ready to be inspired in The Movement with the YMCA of Greater Kansas City. Welcome to The Movement. I'm your host, Mark Hulet. Fired up to have Suzanne McCormick, CEO and President of the YMCA of the USA. So honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Mark. I'm glad to be here. It's
Kansas
great
City.
to be back in Kansas City.
Back in Kansas City. Coming all the way back to Kansas City from the East Coast. Thanks for your time. I know you're spending a couple of days with us here, but the third time is the charm. We're going to have a great time this afternoon with a board retreat, and it'll be a treat for our board to have you here as well.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah. So let's get started with maybe just take us on a little personal journey. Professional journey, personal journey, how you became the CEO of the YMCA of the USA.
Okay. Well, it all started, my dad used to tease me and say that I found my career path in a trash can. It's because my first semester of my senior year of college, I was walking through the common room of my dorm, and I saw this bright piece of paper in the trash can, and it had been a flyer that had been on the bulletin board above that someone had either thrown away or it had fallen down. But it was an announcement talking about an open house on campus to come learn about the Peace Corps.
Oh, wow.
And so I went to this open house, and I fell in love with the idea of joining the Peace Corps. I had been a poli-sci major. Most of my studies, actually, I would describe them as social justice studies. I was studying politics in South Africa. Long story short, I ended up going to the Peace Corps directly after college. Well, after a little bit of a semester off. And I just fell in love with the idea of service. And when I came back to the States, I found a really cool job in New York City helping immigrants and refugees. Mm-hmm. And from that point forward, I've always been in the community impact space. A lot of my career was spent with United Way. I worked at the United Way in Portland, Maine for about 13 years total. I led a chapter of the American Red Cross there. Oh, wow. I worked in community action, and then eventually I found my way to the national office of United Way Worldwide. And so I was in a role that was somewhat similar to my role now. My job was to lead the team that was supporting United Ways around the country in a federated structure similar to our federated structure. And after about 2 years there, I just made the decision that they were looking for a new CEO, and there were a lot of expectations that I would pursue that opportunity. But I decided that I felt like the organization needed something different and that I didn't have the right energy at the time. And so I did not put my hat in the ring. And 3 weeks later, I got the call about this opportunity at YMCA of the USA. And so I like to think the job found me as much as I found it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Coming out of the trash can to...
Yeah. But that's something my dad used to say to me.
That's lovely. With those agencies, so you talk about United Way, Peace Corps, Red Cross, service organizations, right? Community impact organizations, and the YMCA as well. Talk to me a little bit about maybe the similarities that you see through some of those positions and places and spaces, and then maybe what are the unique opportunities that the Y might have in that space.
I do say that I have had the opportunity to work with some of the strongest community impact brands in this country. I think many people know those, and so there's similarities in terms of how we're organized, trying to serve a very large country. There's similarities in the constant challenge of trying to figure out and decide what is best done at a local level, where are there opportunities for regional consolidation, what kinds of things should be led from a centralized national office. So a lot of similarity in that, same challenges, I would say. The other similarity specifically between the United Way federated structure and our YMCA structure is that we have YMCAs like United Ways that are of a variety of sizes. Some of them are in large metropolitan areas, some are in mid-size communities, and some are in really small communities. And so that presents a challenge in thinking about how to serve and support them. What I have found, two things I think that are standouts for the YMCA. First and foremost, I don't think there's none of those organizations that I've worked for serves the generations along a continuum of services in the way that the YMCA does. You can walk into a YMCA and you can see a toddler, a baby, a toddler, school-age kids, parents to seniors who are there socializing and taking care of their health. And there is no other organization in this country, I think, that does what we do across that spectrum. The other thing that it's a standout for me culturally with the YMCA is that the intersection between our staff and our volunteers' sort of personal identity with their professional identity is so strong. Like the call of our mission it's a very, very personal call that leads many people to give their whole career to the advancement of this mission. I mean, I've never worked with a group of professionals who feel such purpose and that this is their life's calling as much as it is personally and professionally. I know. Well, you're a good example of that. And there are hundreds, there are thousands of examples of that.
Yeah. I think about the 6 generations, right? I mean, last 2 Fridays ago, I attended at one of our Cleaver Ys, the Cleaver Y in Midtown in Kansas City, the birthday party of Miss Bird, who turned 105. And she looks like she might be 80, and that's funny to say when, you don't want to say you look 80, but when you're 105, you look 80. She looks more. Yeah, it's a compliment. And she's in the pool, she's doing the laps, she's walking, and she's just, inspirational to a lot of people, and the community just loves her. And so I'm glad we were able to celebrate her 105th birthday at the Y, where she spends a lot of her time.
That's awesome. And I'm sure at that Y there are also like younger generations just engaged in other amazing, fulfilling activities that are helping them grow.
Kids at 0 to 5 in the water for the first time, or the teenagers that are on the courts or in leadership programs. All those things happening, and that cycle and that continuum is just fantastic. So let's talk about the Y and maybe some impacts and some of the thoughts about some initiatives, maybe in healthy living. What initiatives are boiling or being bubbled up, innovative ideas that are happening around healthy living coming from YUSA, and just thoughts on that?
Well, as you know, we think about health in spirit, mind, and body, and it's core to who we are. And I think so many of our core programs continue to just demonstrate that they're hugely important for people's well-being overall. Some of the new things, I think I'm glad that you raised the story of Mrs. Bird, because I think this focus on healthy aging is getting more and more attention. And when I say healthy aging, it's the physical aging. And so you said Miss Bird she's 105 and she looks like she's 80. So there's this physical component, but it's also, you said she had her birthday party there?
Yes.
Yeah. So that connectedness and that we recognize more and more that social connectedness is such a fundamental part of our health. And so seeing much more focus being put on that recognition and creating opportunities for that to happen. Also, something that has been around in the Y for a while, but continues to demonstrate just amazing outcomes is the programs that we have around chronic disease prevention, like diabetes prevention, is one. We have been a great partner with the CDC for many years in being able to deliver evidence-based programs. We know that is going to continue to innovate and be important.
Right.
And then I think the real area of innovation, maybe I guess we'd call it innovation, is we are seeing more and more interest by third-party payers, for example, insurance companies or Medicare, who see the value
Right.
of our holistic health focus, and they want to pay for it for their members or for their community members. So that's an area that we hope to see much more growth.
Yeah, and that's true for us in Kansas City. I mean, the opportunities that some of those third-party payers give those that have challenged budgets, even though we have financial assistance, there's still that challenge of access, right? And it does provide that access for healthy living.
The other area that we are seeing more and more WISE focus on is actually saying mental health is part of our programming, and that's a change. I remember talking about mental health with a group at one of our national events with some of our volunteer leaders, and I got an email afterwards from a board chair of a local Y who said, I was a little disappointed to hear you say mental health. Like, we're not in the mental health business. And instead of writing him back, I said, well, could we have a phone call? And I said, tell me about the work that you do at the Y. And he just described many of the things I said. It's like we bring people together. We help them feel like they belong. We focus on their physical well-being. And I said, but like all those things lead to better mental health. Maybe it feels better to say well-being. And he said, you know what? You're right. And so the recognition and the intentionality, we're seeing much more of that now at YMCAs.
Yeah, I think also in our community, the split between mental health and behavioral health is challenged for some people to grasp too, right? You've got this mental health issue where it's a better lifestyle, it's a well-being, it's making that holistic feel of your life move forward, and then there's this behavioral thing that a lot of this is for some children coming after the pandemic and being isolated and not having the continuous. So there's that part where maybe in our youth development services, we're seeing some in the before and after school, some behavioral health issues, which we're trying to train our staff and give them the toolbox to work with children in that world. But how do we continue to push for mental health? I think that's something to keep in mind as we move forward as well. So staying on this youth development swing, I mean, again, all the buckets that we do, I think the youth development one just makes my heart swell as much. But nationally, serving 7 million teens and youth and children across the country that's an incredible responsibility. Talk about some of the signature programs that the Y is delivering to support these leaders of tomorrow.
One of my absolute most favorite programs is our Youth in Government program. And every year, our youth and government programs across the country, which focus mostly on high school students, really the belief of that program is that everyone should have the opportunity to learn democracy. We have over 50,000 kids who participate in that program, and it's just an incredible civic engagement learning opportunity. They get to learn about the process of legislation. They get to learn the roles and responsibilities of being, for example, a governor or an attorney general, and they learn to advocate. So they learn all these incredible skills, and so many of them go on to go into public service. When we do our advocacy days and we go visit our representatives or our senators, it is not uncommon to meet one of their staffers who say, oh, I was a youth and government kid. So from the fact that it teaches civic education and it really does lead to leadership development from a practical point of view, but also I've heard so many youth and government kids talk about how it changed them as a person. I met a young youth governor from when I was visiting in New Jersey, and she talked about how in high school she had low self-esteem and low confidence. And then after getting involved in the Youth and Government program, she found her voice, and she's going on to grad school. And she said that it was that program that gave her the confidence to be a leader and just to be a better person. So that's one of my favorite programs. I think one of our other signature programs that doesn't get enough street cred for the leadership development is our camping programs, and especially when you think about the counselors who work at camps, that is such a leadership opportunity to have to plan and manage daily and weekly activities for a tribe of children, and to work with your peers and to have the opportunity to supervise is just great leadership development. But through all of our programs, it's about character development and the building blocks of what it means to be a good, kind person. Right. Is going to hopefully every one of our programs, no matter when a kid gets in, starts them on a leadership development journey.
Yeah, there's so many intertwining pieces of that. It ties in mental health too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're back over in healthy living, and there's just some of those lines get blurred too. But the focus on kids is again something that for my entire career, I think it hooked me early, and just being able to serve the community and serve the kids in the community. What about opportunities for growth in the Y? How do you see things evolving? I mean, I'm going to make you look down the road a little bit, which is, the CEO, spirit, right? Looking down the road, what's the vision? How do you see some opportunities that are ahead of us over the next few years? I think some of the things I already see happening here are what I want to become the norm, and it is this model of being what I think you described, the center of community. Love it.
That third space in a community where, again, all generations can come. They can find social connection. They can find opportunities to strengthen their own spirit, mind, and body. And so I say that generally, but what it looks like specifically to me is YMCA is really intentionally building partnerships from their communities that bring those programs together. I've seen you all have centers here where you're partnering with a healthcare provider, so there's other partners there. I've seen Ys in other parts of the country who will have a community college embedded in their actual center, so that a family can have all their needs met. So it's really that whole list. For me, the Y of the future is going to be an even stronger center of community where people can get all the many things they need, maybe not provided by the Y, but by a partner who is there co-locating potentially with a Y. So it's continuing to expand how we think about what everyone needs. It's about what people need for their holistic well-being.
Yeah,
And partnership building. I think we have to always think about, if we can't do it, who can, and how do we create something together.
Yeah, I think part of that too is the opportunities also create some challenges. You got to find those willing partners that are willing to share that load, and not just, this is what we do and you stay in your lane, we'll stay in our lane, and try to figure out where the right partners are. And I'm proud for the last 20 plus years in Kansas City that we've been able to find great partners in municipalities. Again, you mentioned school districts, you mentioned with healthcare partners, all those that are looking to partner, because, again, being the center of community, you can't do it all by yourself. And Togetherhood programs and all other programs that allow you to do that.
And it takes a mindset, too, that you're willing. You're willing
partner.
Yes, a willing partner. And I have seen, I think the pandemic, in some ways, people contracted into a survival mode, and not. They also realized, oh my gosh, we got to figure out how to do things differently, and you got to carry that forward now.
Yeah. So all this future stuff, I'm going to step back a little bit. The Y began 1844 in London, jumps the big pond, lands, on the East Coast in Boston in 1851, lands in Kansas City in 1860. You've got all these things that have happened for the last 170 to 175, 180 years, 165 next years for Kansas City. So you got these long-standing traditions that have happened. And again, the Y's movement, we talked about it. That's the name of the podcast. We're moving and shaking. We're trying to stay in front of trends, or trying to play catch up to trends, or help transition trends. But with all these long-standing programs or services that the Y's had. Talk to me about the need for innovation and moving forward.
I think if you look back in our history, we have been an innovative organization. Like, we have adapted with the times. You look back in the history, we started with a focus on young men. And then there was a recognition that young women also had needs. And so the organization evolved to be more inclusive in that way. When new refugees came or immigrants came to the United States, the Y saw a need and adapted its programs to address what was new at the time. We were instrumental in some of the civil rights movements, is recognizing, this change that was happening in America and being a place where people could come together to organize. So I think our history shows that we always have been, looking around to see what's happening. I think, and this goes to sort of my vision for the future too. I think when you look at where we are right now in our country, that does feel divisive and polarized. Like, my vision is that the YMCA becomes a place where people realize they can come together and they can talk about their differences and they can reunite and build bridges, because our country needs it, and I think we're well positioned to do that. But the other thing I'll say about innovation is within this federated model, it actually allows us, because our Ys are able to try new things on the ground in their community, then we at the national office, when we see that, we have an opportunity to say, whoa, that looks like it's really working. We should elevate that and amplify that. So we've got, if you think about it, in this, we've got 766 YMCAs around the country. Those are all places for new ideas to be born. And then we've got a structure that allows us to elevate them and amplify them. Maybe we need to do that better, but I think we're set up because Ys are testing grounds every day. And that's part of what I love about my job is when I'm out visiting and I see, and I can go back to the national office and say, do you know what's happening in Kansas? Do you know what's happening in Memphis? Like, other people need to know that. And so that's part of what we do is we are trying to organize innovation cohorts to bring people together if they're interested in, for example, we've got one right now that's really looking at what are the best leading practices in the delivery of mental health services. How do we explore that? How do we figure out what could be elevated and amplified? We've got a group who is formed that we support around looking at sustainability of their buildings. So that's the fun stuff. And I think it's just, again, we've got this field of opportunity for innovation to bubble up.
I appreciate that. I'll just be truthful here, I've never put, the response is innovation, because you're literally trying to support or fix something or repair or move it forward, whatever that right word is. It's a great way to think about it. I will use that. I'm stealing that. That will be some things that show up on a slide deck here soon for me in conversations. The mission of the Y states in there, and I'll use air quotes as we're on video, for all. And talk a little bit about the DE&I, diversity, inclusion, and equity, and how the YMCA is committed to championing that.
Well, the other, in many of our mission statements, there's also that we're delivering our mission founded on Christian principles. And sometimes I've been in conversations with people, if you say, they've literally said, well, how can you be committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion when you're founded on Christian principles? And my response always is that our Christian principles were based on the life of Jesus, and I would describe him as radically inclusive. He taught to love all, to serve all, to care for all. And that, to me, is the greatest rationale for us to continue to demonstrate that we are for all. And no matter your religion, no matter, you're welcome. And that's how Jesus lived his life and taught others. And that's that's the lesson that we want to carry forward into our DE&I work. So for me, it's without question. It's foundational. Like, we are here to serve our communities, no matter your shape, your size, your religious beliefs, you should be welcomed. And we're here to love, serve, and care for you.
Yeah, the U.S. is still a melting pot, right?
It is.
It is. It still is. It has been since its inception and founding. Which leads me to another question, talking about those coming here. We're also out there. And I mentioned earlier that London was where the YMCA began. So we've had this international presence, at least from our perspective. Maybe London and England thinks differently, that it expanded to the United States, right? But Peace Corps in college, I think it was Thailand, am I right?
Yes, that's right.
So the Y's in 120 countries across this fabulous globe, doing all sorts of fabulous work. So what are some of those trends that you see that, as you've traveled, which I know you have, you see emerging that are out there at the international level that may be here or may not be here yet?
There's some to tie this back to the belonging, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some really amazing work that I have had the privilege of witnessing is in the space of bridge building and in some places in really challenged countries that I think are great examples for us to learn from and bring back to the United States. One example I would give you is I had the opportunity to visit the YMCA in Kosovo, which I didn't know anything. I knew, I really had not spent much time understanding that part of the world. But Kosovo is the youngest European country, and there's still incredible tension and challenge between the Kosovars and the Serbians. And the YMCA there is, it is seen as the non-governmental organization who is doing the best bridge building work between young Serbians and young Kosovars. Teaching them to understand their differences. They have just really investing in young leader development so that they are going to approach the world in a more inclusive way, not in a combative way. So I think that's a great lesson. There are other Ys that I think are just doing amazing work, really with empowering young people as leaders. We serve a lot of young people. We do youth development,
right.
But in our governance structures, we don't have as much youth involvement as I've seen in some other countries. For me, I learn something every country I've visited. Sometimes they come and they think, oh, the U.S. is here, we want to learn from them. We have as much to learn from them as they have from us. But I think this work, I'm really looking forward later in October, I'll have the opportunity to visit South Africa for the first time. And while I have not visited or seen their programs, I have gotten to know the leader of the Y there, and that's the work that he's doing too, is bridge building in a post-apartheid country. And I'm really looking forward to learning from him.
And you've traveled across the world. You've traveled across the United States. Again, I'm just going to say this, third time in Kansas City. I love that. Not to beat that horse, but I'm sure there's some great stories out there, impactful stories that you've seen. You've mentioned several along the way. Anything else bubble up in your mind that you've seen? Again, you're taking ideas, you're sharing them, but there's got to be some that just kind of struck that heart chord a little bit stronger than others.
I had the opportunity. It's everywhere you go. Really, it's hard not to be inspired. It is. Yeah. It's impossible.
Permission to talk about some other place than Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, internationally, I'll mention two. One, I did have the opportunity to spend some time in Brazil, where they're doing this really impactful work in just some very poor, underserved neighborhoods that are not safe for young people. And yet they have managed to build some political partnerships that allow them to be in these very dangerous neighborhoods. And they've created space for young people to come to learn workforce development, like entrepreneurship, basic academics. It's just safe places. And when it's so poignant there, like you're there and you see the safe place for kids. And then when you walk out of that, you realize what a dangerous place they're operating in. And so it puts it in perspective. In the United States, we think it's hard, but we have those hard places too. But that was really inspiring. And then I will say I had the opportunity to meet Pope Francis this
Oh,
year,
wow.
and talk about some of the work that we're doing in the United States, and that was a pretty cool experience. It was he has such a kind, loving aura about him, and he loves the work of the Y. And I actually got to go because he's best friends with the Brazilian cardinal, and the leaders in Brazil invited me to go with them.
Oh, that's wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Those are
never
some great
expected
stories.
that.
No. I'm a little speechless on that one, sitting across that. I'm thinking there's also some fun stories to share. I mean, I know you've traveled all around the country, but I just appreciate you being here in Kansas City. I think the first time you were here, we did our Challenger event, and we had our fashion show the first time you were here, and then you came back for draft period. I think when the draft was in Kansas City, and today we're gonna, like I said earlier, gonna be with our board and have some engaging conversations about looking forward and look forward to more conversations with you there. If I were to ask you what keeps you up at night as the CEO of the YMCA of the USA, what would you say?
That we have to, there's more for us to do to make sure that every child in our care is as safe as they can be. That's just, we touch so many million lives.
Yeah.
And I want every child to feel safe and cared for. And so we have amazing standards and amazing programs, but it's that something negative is going to happen is the thing that worries me most. It doesn't worry me a lot. It's just like it's
there.
Yeah.
It's on there. Which I'm assuming that's what keeps you motivated and energized to stay focused on making change and supporting all the programs and services that are across the country as well. So final question, then I got a few more questions for you. This is the final main question.
Okay.
What's the legacy of Suzanne McCormick with the YMCA of the USA?
I meet so many people who tell me what the Y did for them as an individual, sometimes what the Y did for their family. To anchor back to this vision of us being a place where people feel like they belong and that relationships can be made, that 10 years from now, people will also talk about what the Y did for their community, not just for them as an individual, but how it made this part of Kansas better, or this part of Cleveland better, or this part of Raleigh, North Carolina better. It's how it made my neighborhood better and my community better, both from a physical being, but also from a feeling. Like it helped us come together during a divisive time. And then I also hope that there will be more female leaders in the Y by the time I lead. I hope that I set that example as the first female CEO and that more women are in leadership positions.
Yeah. Inspiring. I appreciate your leadership, and again, appreciate you being in Kansas City. I always end my podcast with a final 4 questions.
Is this like a speed round?
Yeah, kind of like speed round a little bit. The answers don't have to be long. They can be one word, or you can go off and however you want. So the first one is, what book are you reading or listening to right now?
Oh, this is okay, I'm just going to say it. The It Girl by Ruth Ware. It's like escape reading. I'm escape reading.
That's good.
I'm escape reading.
Good.
But I do have about 3 books on leadership that I listen to on my Audible.
I have learned that I can't ask what book are you reading anymore. You have to ask what are you maybe listening to on a podcast or somewhere on a stream. If you could travel to any era, which one would you visit?
I've always had a fascination with the reign of Queen Elizabeth I.
Okay.
I do not know why.
I wasn't going to ask you why, so I'm just going to leave that one right there.
I feel like I lived there in another life.
What's your superpower?
Listening.
Okay. Who or what inspires you the most?
I get inspiration from a lot of places and a lot of people. I really do. And maybe that's my superpower. It's not hard for me to be inspired, seeing others living their lives a certain way or helping others. I'll just say that. I mean, all I have to do is go to a Y and visit to get inspiration. I mean that so genuinely.
Yeah.
It is just to see. Sometimes it's the person sitting behind the front desk saying hi or welcoming people in, or it's somebody on the pool deck cheering the seniors on. It's I see it everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you again for being here. And that, my friends, is Suzanne McCormick, President and CEO of the YMCA of the USA. Thanks for being on the movement and being in the movement, because you're both on it and in it every day. Okay, folks, stay motivated, stay connected, keep moving forward with us on the movement. Together, we're building a stronger community, one story at a time. Thanks for spending time with us on the movement. Visit kansascitymca.org for more information. And be sure to follow the YMCA of Greater Kansas City on social media for the latest updates.